It's kind of weird when you think about it, how tiny little details can completely change the choices you make every day.
Mm.
Not the huge life decisions, but
hmm
the small stuff, like why you grab one snack over another, or how you spend your money almost without thinking.
It really is. And it gets right to this idea that our surroundings, our environment, it's constantly sort of shaping what we do, often completely unconsciously.
Right. Like it's designed that way.
Exactly. And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We're getting into these, well, really powerful ideas from Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein's book, Nudge. Improving decisions about health, wealth, and happiness.
Yeah, a huge book. And we really want to unpack how we, humans actually make decisions.
Mm.
Why we mess up so often, but predictably.
hmm
And how maybe the places we make choices in can be set up differently.
Set up to gently guide us towards better outcomes, but crucially, without taking away our freedom to choose whatever we want.
Exactly. So we've pulled out the main ideas, the key definitions, some of the really striking examples, and the core arguments straight from the book itself.
Think of it as a direct line into understanding this concept. It's
Yeah.
really shifted how people think about policy, business, even just personal habits.
Okay, so let's dig in. Thaler and Sunstein, they start with this really fundamental distinction. It's absolutely key to why nudges are even a thing. They talk about two kinds of beings, econs and humans.
That's right. Econs, they're like the imaginary people in traditional economics textbooks. Perfectly rational, totally unbiased.
The robots.
Yeah, basically calculation machines, always making the perfect choice to maximize their own benefit, knowing everything.
But then there are humans, which is, well, us.
Right. And we are, as they put it, systematically wrong, predictably wrong.
Not just random mistakes, but like patterns of errors.
Exactly. Econs never get things wrong in a biased way, but humans, we mess up constantly and in ways you can actually anticipate.
And a big reason for that, the book argues, is how our brains work. These two different ways of thinking. The automatic system and the reflective system.
System 1 and System 2, basically.
Yeah. The automatic system, System 1, that's your gut reaction. Super fast, intuitive, happens without conscious thought. Like Homer Simpson, maybe.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's the analogy they use. It's what lets a pro athlete react instantly, or why you just know what Fahrenheit feels like if you grew up with it.
And the reflective system, System 2. That's the slow, deliberate, conscious effort. Like Mr. Spock.
Right. Doing complex math, weighing pros and cons for a big decision. That's your reflective system working hard.
The really mind-blowing thing is that because our mistakes are predictable, because they follow these patterns,
Yeah.
we can actually do something about it.
Yeah.
If you know how people are likely to mess up, you can design things to help them avoid those errors.
Okay, so how do we mess up? The book talks about heuristics, these mental shortcuts. Yeah, rules of thumb. We use them because, we're busy. We can't deeply analyze every single decision. They're usually helpful, fast, and frugal, as they say.
But sometimes they lead us astray.
Definitely. Take the availability heuristic.
Okay.
That's when we judge how likely something is based on how easily examples come to mind. So, after 9/11, the vivid images of the attacks were incredibly available in people's minds.
Right. So terrorism felt like a much bigger, more immediate threat than, say, risks from sunbathing.
Exactly. Even though statistically, for the average person, the risk from sunbathing is much, much higher. But it's less vivid, less available.
Wow. And that skis everything. Personal choices, even government spending priorities.
Totally. Then there's this other one related to the representativeness heuristic, the hot hand idea in basketball.
Oh, yeah. Everyone believes in the hot hand. A player makes a few shots.
They're on fire, right? More likely to make the next one. You see a pattern, a streak.
But the stats guys looked into it.
And completely debunked. It's just random variation. Streaks happen in random sequences, but our brains are desperate to see patterns, to see representation where there isn't any.
Like seeing faces in clouds.
Sort of. Or people thinking cancer clusters must have a specific local cause, when often it's just statistical noise. We misperceive randomness all the time.
Okay, what else trips us up?
Well, there's unrealistic optimism. Most of us think we're less likely to experience bad events than others.
The above average effect. Like how 90% of drivers think they're better than average drivers.
Or 94% of college professors think they do above average work. It's almost universal. We tend to be overly optimistic about our own abilities and our own futures.
And the downside is?
We don't take sensible precautions. If you think you're immune, why bother with, say, saving enough for retirement or wearing a seatbelt quite as diligently? This optimism actually makes us more susceptible to needing a nudge.
Okay, and you mentioned inertia before. That ties into loss aversion, right?
Absolutely. This is a big one. People dislike losses about twice as much as they enjoy equivalent gains. Losing $100 feels roughly twice as bad as finding $100 feels good.
Twice as much, wow.
Yeah, and that fuels inertia. We don't want to give up what we already have, even if we could trade it for something better.
Like that coffee mug experiment.
Exactly. People who were given a mug demanded like twice the price to sell it compared to what people who didn't have one were willing to pay for it. Just owning it briefly doubled its perceived value to them.
Yeah.
Status quo bias.
So we just stick with things,
Yeah.
even if they're not optimal.
Often, yeah. Think automatic renewals for subscriptions or default settings on your phone. It takes effort to change, and we're loss-averse about losing the status quo, even if the status quo isn't great. Whatever, heuristic, they call it sometimes.
Okay, so we're biased, we're unrealistically optimistic, we hate losses, we stick with defaults. What about just plain old temptation?
Ah, yes. Mindless choosing and temptation. We often make choices in the heat of the moment, a hot state, that our cooler, more rational selves, our cold state, would regret.
Like eating that entire bowl of chips before dinner.
Or Thaler taking the cashew nuts away from his dinner guests.
Yeah.
They were just mindlessly eating them because they were there right in front of them, ruining their appetite.
I remember reading about that popcorn study too. Stale popcorn.
Yeah. People with the bigger buckets ate way more, over 50% more, even though they admitted the popcorn tasted bad. We just consume what's easy, what's there, mindlessly.
And this gap between what we want to do, our planner self, and what we actually do, our doer self, leads to all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
Smoking, overeating, not saving.
Right. Our impulsive doer often overrides our sensible planner. That's why external help, what they call commitment devices, can be so useful.
Things that lock us into a better choice.
Exactly. Like putting money into a Christmas Club account you can't touch all year. It seems irrational, zero interest, no liquidity, but it helps people save who otherwise wouldn't. It's a tool to bind the doer.
Or even setting up automatic bill payments so you don't forget.
Sure, that counts too. Anything that helps your planner control your doer.
Okay, so if we accept that we humans are flawed decision makers in these predictable ways, what's the implication?
It leads directly to the idea of choice architecture.
Which is?
Basically, anyone who designs the environment in which people make choices is a choice architect. And importantly, choice architecture is unavoidable.
Unavoidable. How so?
Well, think about it. The way food is arranged in a cafeteria, the order of options on a form, the default settings on software, someone made those decisions. There's no neutral way to present choices. The design itself will influence the outcome.
Huh. Okay, so the goal isn't to avoid influencing people, because that's impossible.
Right. The goal is to be a good choice architect, to design environments understanding how humans actually behave, especially our lazy, error-prone automatic system.
So how do you do that? Are there principles?
Yeah, the book outlines several. A big one is expect error. Good design anticipates that people will make mistakes and tries to make the system forgiving.
Like the Paris metro ticket slots. You can stick the ticket in any which way, and it just works.
Perfect example. Or designing gas pump nozzles so the diesel nozzle is too big to fit into a regular gasoline car tank, physically preventing a common, costly error.
Simple, but clever. What else?
Give feedback. Good systems tell you when you're doing well or when you've made a mistake so you can correct it.
Like the little click sound on a digital camera.
Yeah.
Or the preview screen.
Exactly. Or, more ambitiously, those home energy monitors like the Ambient Orb or Watson device, they make your energy consumption visible, giving you immediate feedback and nudging you towards conservation.
Right. Making the invisible visible. Another principle.
Understanding mappings. This is about helping people figure out the connection between a choice they make and the actual outcome or welfare they experience.
Okay, like choosing ice cream is easy. Mapping, you taste it, you know if you like it.
Right. But choosing a mortgage.
Sure.
Or a health plan. The mapping is incredibly complex. How does this interest rate structure translate into your long-term wealth? It's hard for people to grasp.
So good choice architecture makes that mapping clearer.
Yeah, like translating megapixels into printable photo sizes or showing the estimated annual fuel cost on a car sticker. Not just MPG, which is abstract for most people. It connects the choice to a meaningful outcome.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense. We're flawed. The way choices are presented matters immensely. Which brings us to their big idea. Libertarian paternalism.
Yes, the phrase that raises eyebrows.
It sounds like a total contradiction.
Yeah.
Libertarian means freedom. Paternalism means, well, someone acting like your parent.
But they define it very specifically. It's libertarian because it insists on preserving freedom of choice. No options are blocked. Nobody is forced. It's paternalistic because the choice architect is trying to influence behavior to make choosers better off as judged by themselves.
So it's all about the nudge.
Exactly. A nudge is an aspect of choice architecture that alters behavior predictably without forbidding options or significantly changing economic incentives. And crucially, nudges must be easy and cheap to avoid.
Like putting fruit at eye level.
That's a classic nudge. Banning junk food, that's not a nudge, that's a mandate.
So it's a kind of middle way. Not forcing people, but not just leaving them completely to their own biased devices either.
That's the idea. A third way, potentially appealing across the political spectrum. Not bigger government necessarily, but smarter governance that accounts for real human psychology.
Let's talk examples. Retirement savings seems like a huge area for this.
Oh, absolutely. So many people fail to save enough, even when they intend to. Partly inertia, partly the complexity of things like 401ks.
And the big nudge there is.
Automatic enrollment. Instead of making opt-in the default for joining a company retirement plan, you make opt-out the default.
So you're automatically in the plan unless you actively choose to get out.
Right. And the results are dramatic. Participation rates jump from maybe 20-30% to 80-90% in many cases. And very few people opt out, suggesting the nudge helps them do what they kind of wanted to do anyway.
And there's that other program, Save More Tomorrow.
Yeah, smart. That addresses the fact that even with auto-enrollment, people often stick with low default savings rates. And they hate seeing their paycheck go down because of loss aversion.
So SMART gets them to commit now to increasing your savings rate later whenever they get a pay raise.
Exactly. The contribution goes up, but their take-home pay doesn't decrease. It brilliantly uses inertia and loss aversion to help people save more over time. Hugely successful, very high take-up rates.
Okay, another big one, organ donation.
Yeah, the power of the default here is just stunning. Countries where you have to explicitly opt in to be a donor have vastly lower donation rates than countries with presumed consent, where you're assumed to be a donor unless you explicitly opt out.
Like Germany versus Austria, you mentioned.
Yeah.
12% versus 99% consent. That's incredible, just changing the default question.
It really is. Now, presumed consent makes some people uneasy, so a more libertarian alternative is mandated choice.
Meaning you have to answer the question.
Right. Like when you renew your driver's license, you have to check a box, yes or no. That still significantly increases donation rates compared to pure opt-in just by forcing a decision.
And quickly, what about something like healthcare, like Medicare Part D? That seemed like a choice nightmare.
It was. Dozens of plans, super complex features. Seniors were overwhelmed. Studies showed many weren't picking the most cost-effective plan, even when given simplified choices.
So nudges could help there too.
Well, the author suggests things like intelligent assignment, maybe assigning people to a reasonable default plan based on their past drug use, which they can always change, or better mapping tools like a standardized summary of costs and coverage that makes comparison easier. Less overwhelming choice. Better guidance.
Of course, not everyone loves this idea of nudging. People worry about a slippery slope to more coercive policies, right?
Definitely. Or concerns about evil nudgers using these techniques for profit or manipulation, not public good. And the challenge of defining what better off truly means for someone else.
Valid concerns.
But Thaler and Sunstein argue back that, again, choice architecture is inevitable. Someone is always designing the choices. Isn't it better to do it transparently, thoughtfully, aiming to help people overcome known biases while always preserving their ultimate freedom to choose differently?
The goal is helping, not hurting.
Yeah.
And keeping it easy to ignore the nudge if you want to.
Exactly. Trying to help the people who struggle most with decisions while imposing minimal costs on those who are already making informed choices. That's the ideal.
So wrapping up, it really comes down to understanding we're humans, not econs. That the environment shapes our choices constantly. And that subtle changes, these nudges, can guide us toward better health, wealth, and happiness without forcing our hand.
It's a powerful lens for looking at the world.
So, thinking about all this, where in your own life do you feel like maybe you're predictably messing up? Acting a bit mindlessly, perhaps. Could be screen time, spending habits, maybe even just remembering to take vitamins. Now, just imagine for a second, who's the choice architect there? Is there one? And could you design, even just for yourself, a simple nudge, something easy to ignore, but that might just steer you slightly differently? Like, what if, say, your banking app showed a little progress bar towards a savings goal right on the main screen? How might that tiny bit of feedback change things? Something to think about.